Welcome to Embroidery Essentials from the Unicorn Factory. I'm Helen, and in this video I'm going to show you how to work with stranded embroidery thread to get you to the point where your thread is ready to stitch. We're going to cover what is stranded embroidery thread, how to separate and pull out the thread you need, how long your thread should be to work with, 2 different methods of threading your needle, and also using a needle threader if you need a bit of help. So what is stranded embroidery thread? Well, it's this stuff. And whereas normal sewing thread only has 1 strand, as you can see here, this stranded thread is made up of 6 strands. So you can keep it like this and embroider with it as 6 strands. You could just pick 1 strand out and use it, or you can use any number of strands to stitch with when you're embroidering, and often you'll find in a pattern that it is got a mixed number. So for some bits you might be using a single strand, for some bits you might be using 2 or 3. It'll come in a skein like this, so this is one of the DMC ones. I prefer to transfer mine to bobbins to make them easier to work with. And the way that you do that, if you want to, is you pull your thread from the bottom when it's in here. This is the bit to pull to then wind it round your bobbin for use. I find that about 30 centimetres or just a bit longer is a good working length of thread. And the way I measure it, so I don't have to worry about having a ruler handy, is by grabbing it between my fingers and then pulling it down to my elbow, and that gives me just over 30 centimetres of thread. So I snip it there. If the finger to elbow thing doesn't work for you, then you can just find another way that's handy for you to work out what's approximately the right amount of thread, so that you don't have to worry about faffing on with a ruler all the time. So once you've got your length of thread, you then need to pull out how many strands you need. So like I said, you might want to work with it as the full 6 strands, and that's fine. You just start off with that. But if you wanted to work with any other number of strands, then you just pull them out one by one. So all you do is you just grab a thread in your other hand, you hold on loosely to the other threads and you pull, and that comes out. So if I needed 2 strands, then I would just do that again. So just hold it and pull, and it doesn't matter that it's bunching up because it'll easily go loose again afterwards. So I pulled it up. There's my second strand. As you can see, that's not tangled, so I'll put the other 4 strands to one side, and I get these 2 strands and pop them together, ready to work with. And so yeah, I said there's a couple of methods for actually threading your needle. So the first, using this 30 or so centimetre bit of thread, and I've got my needle here on my needle minder. So all I'll do for this method is I put the thread through the eye of the needle. You might need to just wet the end of your thread slightly to make that easier. And then I just leave a short tail here, and at the other end I'll tie a knot in it. And if it's just a couple of strands, I tend to tie a couple of knots just to make sure that that's tight. And if I just get my practice heap, then you can see I get my thread, pop it through on my practice heap, and that holds because of those knots that I've done at the end. So that's the first method. So you've got a short tail and you've done a knot at the end. For this second method, I actually measure my thread a bit differently. So instead of doing 30 centimetres, I do around 60 centimetres. So I still hold my thread between my finger and thumb. I bring it down to my elbow again. But now, once I've got that length, I actually double it and then I snip there. So that is about 60 or 70 centimetres of thread. Now, the reason I do it this way is because with the traditional method, what I find is that the thread very easily comes out of there like that. The other reason is that if you are doubling over, if you're actually using something like 6 strands, for example here, and you doubled that up, so you had the overhang like that out of your needle, when you're going through your fabric, you're actually pulling 12 strands of thread through your fabric, which is quite a lot and can make it more difficult to work with. So you'll notice if you are part of my Patreon and do any of my patterns, that wherever possible, I tend to use an equal number of threads. So I tend to use 2, 4 or 6. And that is because I prefer this double up method of working. So if we were using 4 strands, then we would pull 2 strands out. So now this is one of my bad habits. You should pull strands out singly. That really stops things from getting tangled, but because I'm impatient, I tend to do 2 at a time, and it's a bit of a risk. Sometimes, like this one is absolutely fine, so that's untangled and there's no tangles here. Sometimes it gets really tangled and makes life more difficult from doing it that way. So don't get into bad habits like me. Pull one out at a time, but you know, show you that there's an alternative there. So with this, I've got my 2 strands and I pop them through, pull them up, and because it's double length, I bring both of the ends together here, tie my knots, and at this point I'll usually just snip the end off so it's not getting in the way while I'm stitching. So I've done that, and now my 2 strands of 60 centimetre working thread have become 4 strands of 30 centimetre working thread. So hopefully you can see that there. So that really just stops my pet hate of having to rethread the needle as I'm going through it. And it's a really good way, or it's the way that I prefer to do it. So then you can see, if you just pull up there, then you're ready to go with that. Finally, if you do feel like you need a bit of help with threading your needle, which some of us do, then you can use something called a needle threader. There's various ones available. This one's from Threadjoy. I think it's probably the most straightforward that I've found, but there's lots of other ones out there. So with this one, you just pop your threader through the eye of the needle. You get your thread and pop it over the hook, so you're going to leave a short, so you'll have a longer bit of thread and you just leave a short tail here. You then bring your needle back over the end of the hook, gathering that thread as you go, and then that tail will come through and you've threaded your needle. So dead easy, and I'll pop the link below to Threadjoy if you want to get one of those. If you join the Unicorn Factory, you actually get a voucher for 10% off the Threadjoy Etsy shop, so that you can grab one of these while you stock up on their gorgeous smelling thread conditioners. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful. If you have any other questions about embroidery, thread, or anything else embroidery related, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. And if you found this video helpful, then make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of our embroidery essentials videos. And if you're on Instagram, come and say hi over at Unicorn Factory UK. And I will see you for another embroidery essentials video very soon.